The heat map of New England housing just shifted. Massachusetts is still expensive, but the chase for value is now blazing just over the border. Start with the ground under our feet. In November, the typical home value in the United States stood at $360,782, just 0.2% higher than the year before. That's the national backdrop. Cool growth after years of frenzy. Now place Massachusetts on that map. Across 50 Bay State cities and towns, the past 12 months ending in November 2025 still delivered five-figure jumps, often well above $20,000, in some cases above $80,000, and frequently on base prices already north of $1 million. The exception is not the high end. In many towns within the Boston-Cambridge-Newton metro, it's the norm. But the stage for 2026 tells a more complex New England story. Hartford is ranked number 1 among large metros for market heat this year. Boston sits at number 7. Providence is number 4. Buffalo holds the number 2 slot, and New York City stands at number 3. The details behind that reshuffling say everything about what's happening, why it's happening, and where the pressure is landing. Look at Hartford first. Inventory there is 63% below pre-pandemic levels, the deepest deficit among the 50 largest U.S. metros. Only 16.5% of sellers cut prices, the second lowest share among those big cities. Last year, home values in Hartford jumped 4.3%, the fastest increase among the country's major metros. Homes there move in about a week, and 66% are selling above asking. Those are not just warm temperatures, those are boil-over signals. In October 2025, the local home value index measured Hartford at $381,760. Now pivot to Boston. The same October 2025 index read $717,711. The share of sales going over asking was about 65% in 2025. Year over year, Boston's home values grew 1.2%, slow by recent New England standards, but on a much higher base than Hartford or Providence. That's an important split. The heat has drifted, but the price floor has not budged. Providence sits in between. Its October 2025 index landed at $503,409, with year-over-year growth at 2.5%. That tells buyers and sellers something obvious and unavoidable about the region. Price matters. Affordability is the lever that decides who moves and when. And as 22-6 begins, the ranking that elevated Hartford to the top weighs 3 factors: price growth, market competition like sales speed, and price cuts, and the job growth associated with each new home permitted. The takeaway is simple. If values are rising faster, price cuts are rarer, and homes turn in roughly a week, the pressure is mounting from the bottom up. What does that pressure look like on the ground in Massachusetts? Start with the extremes. In Weston, the typical home value reached $2,167,570 in the 12 months ending in November 2025. That's an $82,624 jump in 1 year, a 4% gain, and an $804,519 surge, 59%, over 5 years. Wellesley, one town over, hit $1,932,908, up $67,667 in a year, about 3.6%, and up $623,339, 47.6% over 5 years. Dover stands at $1,704,854, up $63,022, 3.8%, with a 5-year rise of $537,076, or 46%. These are not outliers. They are mile markers in the high-end arc around Boston, where scarcity has been a condition for years. Even in the tier just below, the numbers stack quickly. Norwell's typical home value is now $1,002,800, up $56,000 in a year, a 6% jump, and $346,475 higher than 5 years ago, up 52.8%. Lincoln sits at $1,471,924, a 1-year climb of $55,848, 3.9%, and a 5-year leap of $483,997, or 49%. Manchester shows $1,271,507 with a 1-year increase of $53,000. $310, 4.4%, and a 5-year move of $442,545, 53.4%. Follow the shoreline and you feel a steady upward pull. Newton is at $1,461,113, up $51,806 in 12 months, 3.7%, and $402,492 over 5 years, 38%. Chilmark in the Vineyard Haven area reaches $2,320,832, up $49,811 year over year, 2.2%, and a staggering $749,747 across 5 years, 47.7%. Lexington posts $1,520,479, up $46,139, 3.1% over the year, and up $462,826, 43.8% over 5. The middle ring tells a similar story with smaller but still muscular jumps. Wenham's typical value is $1,028,647, rising $47,202 in a year, 4.8%, and $367,894 in 5 years, 55.7%. Cohasset stands at $1,361,625, up $42,458, 3.2% in 1 year, while Concord hits $1,401,330, gaining $42,117, 3.1% in 12 months, and $483,335 in 5 years, 52.7%. Egremont in the Pittsfield area prints at $784,164, with a $41,260 1-year rise, 5.6%, and a 5-year run-up of $306,639, a 64.2% lift that shows even small Berkshire towns caught the same wave. Push farther out, and the same pattern holds. Sherborne comes in at $1,188,919, up $38,761 in a year, 3.4%, and up $369,954 in 5 years, 45.2%. Westwood records $1,190,500 with a $38,760, 3.4% 1-year rise, and a $381,074, 47.1% 5-year climb. Boxford lands at $1,030,736, $37,203 higher year over year, 3.7%, and $322,640 higher over 5 years, 45.6%. For coastal families thinking about schools and commute times, the South Shore is a ticker tape of escalation. Duxbury at $1,057,580, up $33,933, 3.3% over 12 months, and $385,808 higher over 5 years, 57.4%. Scituate at $963,151, up $29,966, 3.2%, a 5-year leap of $321,717, 50.2%. Hingham at $1,264,218, up $28,161, 2.3% on the year, and up $421,044 over 5 years, 49.9%. Andover at $956,045, up $28,535, 3.1% year over year, with a 5-year lift of $306,273, 47.1%. In the North Shore Arc, Lexington's $1,520,479 sits next to Winchester at $1,487,257, which rose $28,835, 2% over 12 months, and $413,724, 38.5% over 5 years. Arlington shows $1,031,693, $25,368 higher, 2.5% this year, and $244,768 above 5 years ago, 31.1%. Newburyport reaches $906,016, climbing $25,983, 3% on the year, and $293,860, 48% over 5. Topsfield, at $934,277, grew $24,450, 2.7% this year, and $280,181, 42.8% over 5. These are not isolated blips. Marshfield $761,000 rose $2,090, $7, 3% year over year, and $253,571, 49.9% over 5 years. West Bridgewater hit $577,325, up $21,615, 3.9% this year, and $163,675, 39.6% over 5. Linfield stands at $1,058,731, up $21,401, 2.1% this year, and $330,767, 45.4% over 5 years. Rowley's $776,628 increased $21,226, 2.8% year over year, and $231,816, 42.5% over 5. Even as we step down the leaderboard, the numbers keep stacking. Danvers at $708,724, up $20,099, 2.9% this year, and $185,612, 35.5% over 5. Hanson at $591,955, up $20,317, 3.6% over 12 months, and $173,282, 41.4% over 5 years. Middleton at $853,215, up $19,657, 2.4% this year, and $232,506, 37.5% over 5. Wayland at $1,119,875, up $19,341, 1.8% this year, and $354,235, 46.3% over 5. The pattern is undeniable. In the dozen months ending November 2022, 5, a Massachusetts buyer could scroll through dozens of towns and watch the typical value rise by $20,000 to $80,000 in a single year, while 5-year lifts frequently ranged from $300,000 to $800,000. Even smaller Berkshire or Pioneer Valley towns saw the pull. Stockbridge sits at $727,467, up $22,579, 3.2% over the year, and $260,331, 55.7% over 5. Mount Washington at $617,542 rose $35,985, 6.2% on the year, and $191,974, 45.1% over 5. Long Meadow near Springfield reached $516,166, up $23,062, 4.7% over 12 months, and $154,237, 42.6% over 5. On Cape Cod and the islands, the same story recommits. Provincetown prints at $1,029,909, up $22,762, 2.3% over the year, and up $354,630, 52.5% over 5. Newbury sits at $908,599, up $23,416, 2.6% over 12 months, and $308,176, 51.3% over 5. Gloucester marks $743,335, up $26,146, 3.6% this year, and $238,596, 47.3% since 5 years ago. If the numbers feel relentless, it's because they are. And yet, even with this drumbeat, the center of gravity is subtly shifting. In Hartford, the average time on market is about a week. 60 TCPS of sales clear above list. Only 16.5% of sellers reduce prices. Values rose 4.3% last year, and the home value index there sat at $381,760 in October. Compare that to Boston's $717,711 and Providence's $503,409, and a picture emerges. Signals suggest budget-conscious buyers may be triangulating toward where inventory is scarce, but entry prices are lower, while legacy high-cost regions, like the Boston Metro, navigate slower percentage gains on a much taller baseline. Competition, however, is not absent in Boston. Far from it. In 2200, roughly 65% of sales in the city went over asking. That pace syncs with what we're seeing in nearby communities. Needham at $1,477,660, rising $30 to $5,577, 2.5% over 12 months, and $465,159, 45.9% over 5 years. Lexington, again at $1,520,479, gained $46,139 this year, and $462,826 over 5. Winchester at $1,487,257, rose $28,835 this year, and $413,724 across 5. The surge across a ring of towns forms a halo effect, high-value markets that can support slow headline growth but still pull six-figure equity gains over a handful of years. There's another layer to this story, the aging of Massachusetts and a product gap for older adults who earn too much to qualify for subsidized units, but not enough to pay for premium assisted living. In Newton, a new apartment community called Opus Newton opened this year to serve middle-income seniors who don't qualify for lower-income housing, but can't afford high-end assisted living. That's not a footnote, it's a direct response to price levels like Newton's $1,461,113, a one-year gain of $51,806, and a 5-year climb of $402,492. When values are that high, conventional downsizing choices close. New models have to open. Zoning, too, is now a frontline contest. In Roxbury, real estate developers behind a planned lab and affordable housing campus have asked the city to reconsider a plan to take their site for a new Madison Park High School. Without diving into the merits, the friction is clear. A single site in Boston that could add research space and affordable housing is in direct tension with an urgent school infrastructure need. On paper, that might seem like a local tug-of-war. In practice, it's a window into how supply pipelines are actually made or unmade, one parcel at a time. The data from towns large and small fill in the topography of that pipeline. Belmont at $1,397,626 climbed $20,603, 1.5% this year, and $339,630, $32.1% over 5. Bedford crossed the seven-figure mark at $1,953, up $20,550, 2.1%, over 12 months, and $268,067, 36.6%, over 5 years. Reading stands at $878,046, $20,519 higher, 2.4%, this year, and $246,921, 39.1% higher over 5. Arlington's $1,031,693 adds $25,368, 2.5% this year, and $244,768, 31.1% over 5. Go east to the water, and the tidal pull intensifies. Marblehead at $997,637 is up $22,648, 2.3% year over year, and $280,281, 39.1% over 5. Newburyport at $906,016 rises $25,983, 3%, this year, and $293,860, 48% over 5. Hamilton, inland but tethered to the same dynamics, sits at $856,047, up $26,012, 3.1%, over 12 months, and $236,791, 38.2% over 5 years. Gloucester at $743,335 adds $26,146, 3.6%, this year, and $238,596, 47.3%, since 5 years past. Spin back to the South Shore and the Cape-adjacent markets. Scituate's $963,151 rose $9,966, 3.2% this year, and Hingham's $1,264,218 rose $28,161, 2.3% over the same period. Norwell at $1,002,800 rose $56,407, 6% in 12 months. Cohasset at $1,361,625 jumped $42,458, 3.2% year over year. Those increments, between about $28,000 and $56,000 in a single year, on million-dollar anchors make a convincing point. Even moderate growth at the high end still forces six-figure down payments and narrows the on-ramps for first-time buyers. The acceleration is not confined to pockets of wealth. Berlin, in the Worcester Metro, records $647,851, $20,797 higher, 3.3% on the year, and $189,136, 41.2% higher over 5. Merrimack at $641,036 rose $20,844, 3.4% this year, and $191,536, 42.6% over 5. West Bridgewater at $577,325 added $21,615 over 12 months. Pembroke at $642,340 moved up $20,577, 3.3%, and $186,775, 41% over 5. These are commuter-friendly places that 5 years back held more attainable marks. Now they're compressing toward the state's median heat. And then there are the standout 5-year escalators. Concord's $1,401,330 is $483,335 above its mark 5 years ago. 52.7%. Wellesley's $1,932,908 is $239 higher, 47.6% over the same horizon. Weston's $2,167,000 is $804,519 beyond its 5-year base, 59%. In Egremont and Chilmark, the 5-year rises are $306,639, 64.2%, and $749,747, 47.7%, respectively. Spread that trend over a region where the U.S. typical value is $360,782, up just 0.2% year over year. And you see the crux. Massachusetts sits on a different elevation. So why the New England reshuffle now, with Hartford at number 1, Providence at number 4, and Boston at number 7 for market heat? The simplest answer is the most visible one. In Hartford, inventory is 63% below pre-pandemic levels. Time on market is roughly 7 days, and 66% of sales are above list, with only 16.5% of sellers cutting prices. That combination, thin shelves, fast turns, scant discounts, usually translates into faster percentage gains because the base price is lower at $381,760 as of October 2025. Boston's base at $717,711 leaves less runway for percentage growth, but the absolute dollars moved remain dizzying in the surrounding towns. Providence, at $503,409, straddles the middle with 2.5% year-over-year growth, lending it a competitive glow. Affordability is the pivot. Prospective buyers who see $1 million and up in Weston, Wellesley, Dover, Lexington, or Newton, where typical values range from $1,461,113 to $2,167,570, see something different in a $381,760 hardboard. They also see the same visible signs of competition: 66% over asking, about a week to land an accepted offer, and rare price cuts. Signals suggest those conditions pull in budget-aware shoppers even as Massachusetts remains a magnet for certain job corridors. The end result is not an exodus. It's a rebalancing of heat toward price points that still have air. Inside Massachusetts, the ripple runs through product types and policy choices. The opening of Opus Newton this year, designed for older adults who sit between subsidized thresholds and luxury pricing, speaks to a new buyer-seller match. A household that can't pencil a $1,461,113 market norm, but needs stability. In Roxbury, the tug-of-war over a site eyed for labs and affordable housing, on one hand, and a new Madison Park High School, on the other, shows how a single decision can redirect a pipeline's flow for years. It's not a theory, it's a constraint that either unlocks units or locks them away from the market. On the buyer side, the geography of price growth shows the widening rings of competition. Hamilton, at $856,000, rose $26,012, 3.1%, this year, and $236,791, 38.2%, over 5. Newbury, at $908,599, climbed $23,416, 2.6%, this year, and $308,176, 51.3%, over 5. Marblehead at $997,637 rose $22,648, 2.3%, over 12 months, and $280,281, 39.1%, over 5. Again and again, the mid-tier towns mirror a scaled version of the high end. Even the complete outer edges, Pittsfield area enclaves like Stockbridge and Mount Washington, show growth that rivals metro-proximate communities. Stockbridge's $727,467 is $22,579 above last year, 3.2%, and $260,331 above 5 years ago, 55.7%. Mount Washington's $617,542 added $35,985, 6.2% year over year, and $191,974, 45.1% over 5 years. That parallel growth hints at a shared driver, a statewide scarcity compounded by households buying across a broader radius. So where does this go in 2026? The base case sits on two rails. First, the expectation that home values nationally will rise by about 1.7% after a sluggish 2025 stands as a light headwind. Second, the outlook that mortgage rates will continue a gradual descent towards 6% is a mild tailwind. Together, those rails suggest a Massachusetts market with continued modest year-over-year gains layered atop already elevated prices, especially in the million-dollar ring around Boston, where even 2 to 4% translates into $30,000 to $80,000 annual moves. In Hartford and Providence, the same rails likely support stronger percentage growth because the starting values $381,760 and $503,409, respectively, leave more runway. Who benefits and who feels the squeeze? Sellers in places like Norwell, which rose $56,407, 6%, year over year to $1,002,800, or in Lincoln, up $55,848, 3.9%, to $1,471,924, continue to capture large absolute gains from relatively small percentage moves. Long-hold owners in Weston, whose 5-year $804,519 jump, 59%, pushes them to $2,167,570, sit on thick equity. First-time buyers and middle-income downsizers face the greatest friction, which is why Opus Newton's model, serving those who don't qualify for lower-income housing and can't afford high-end assisted living, feels tailored to a real gap. Watch two pressure points. One is supply. In Hartford, a 63% deficit versus pre-pandemic inventory, and a mere 16.5% share of price cuts fueled last year's 4.3% rise, a 7-day time on market, and 66% of sales clearing above asking. If Massachusetts were to materially increase its pipeline, including contested sites like the one in Roxbury, that could cool competition at the margins, easing the annual dollar jumps we've just cataloged in towns like Lexington, Winchester, and Newton. If not, the status quo of 2 to 4% annual gains on million-dollar anchors persists. The second is speed. Boston logged about 65% of sales over asking in 2025. If the expected drift towards 6% mortgage rates accelerates bidding, that share could hold or even inch up, particularly in towns where the annual gains are currently pegged between roughly $20,000 and $55,000. Places like Arlington at $1 million, $31,693, up $25,368, Newburyport at $963, up $25,983, and Cohasset at $1,361,625, up $42,458, all in the past year. If, instead, rates settle slower, the competition could soften first at the margins, reflected in higher price cut shares, the inverse of what we see in Hartford now at 16.5%. There is also upside to watch. Providence's 2.5% year-over-year growth on a $503,409 base positions it as a comparative value play. If that pace holds, and if inventory remains controlled, Providence could absorb demand that might otherwise spill into the Boston ring. For Massachusetts sellers, that could mean slightly longer marketing windows in select towns, even if prices continue nudging higher by 2 to 4%, translating into $20,000 to $50,000 annual moves across a wide swath of the state. For buyers, the map offers a strategy anchored in numbers, not guesswork. If the U.S. typical value is $360,782, and a place like Berlin shows $647,851, a $20,797 rise this year, Then Berlin sits in a mid-tier zone where bidding wars might be intense, but not yet at millionaire levels. If a town like Duxbury at $1,057,580 can still move $33,933, 3.3%, in 12 months, then entry requires flexible financing and likely a readiness to go above list, echoing Boston's 65% over-asking pattern in 2025. And across New England, the contrasts sharpen decisions. Boston at $717,711 in October 2025, Providence at $503,409, Hartford at $381,760. Add in the texture, 66% above asking in Hartford, about 65% over asking in Boston, sparse price cuts in Hartford at 16.5%, time on market about a week. Those numbers narrate a region where the definition of hot depends less on history and more on who can move fastest at a price they can actually carry. What happens next will be felt in neighborhoods, not just spreadsheets. If the Roxbury site becomes a high school instead of a lab, an affordable housing campus, the local supply story near Madison Park changes course. If more Opus-like communities open for middle-income seniors, new downsizing pathways could free up single-family stock in towns like Needham at $1,477,660, Lexington at $1,520,479, and Westwood at $1,190,500. If the expected 1.7% national uptick materializes alongside a slide towards 6% mortgage rates, the Massachusetts ring of million-dollar towns likely holds its shape, with another round of $20,000 to $80,000 annual movements, and Hartford and Providence keep drawing attention for what they offer at $381,760 and $503,409. In the meantime, remember the baseline. The U.S. typical value is $360,782, up just 0.2% year over year in November. In Massachusetts, $40,000 and $50,000 annual gains in places like Wenham, up $47,202, or Lexington, up $46,139, are commonplace. Even a quiet town like Watertown, at $812,810, rose $22,611, 2.9% over 12 months, and $165,659, 25.6% over 5 years. And a waterfront outlier like Provincetown, at $1,029,909, stacked $22,762 this year, and $354,630 over 5 years. So the causal chain is tight. Inventory and competition define the heat. The heat splits by price point. High baselines cap percentage growth in Boston's core, but still deliver $30,000 to $80,000 annual gains in the ring. Lower baselines in Hartford and Providence, paired with extreme scarcity, like Hartford's 63% deficit versus pre-pandemic stock, translate into the fastest percentage growth, with 66% of homes selling above asking and only 16.5% taking a price cut. And statewide in Massachusetts, from Weston at $2,167,570 to West Bridgewater at $577,325, the last year has been a march upward, $120,000 to $80,000 step at a time. The outlook from here, base case, is steady pressure. Expect modest home value growth across the state in 2006, layered on high anchors in places like Newton at $1,461,113, Winchester at $1,487,257, and Dover at $1,704,854, with Hartford and Providence remaining intense because their starting points, $381,760 and $503,409, offer more runway. 2 items to watch through year-end. 1. Any move that changes supply pipelines, from the fate of the Roxbury site to local approvals that greenlight more middle-income senior apartments like Opus Newton. 2. how quickly mortgage rates approach 6%, and whether that stokes the share of over-ask deals in Boston, which ran near 65% in 2025, or tilts some buyers toward Providence or Hartford as competition there keeps time on market near a week and price cuts near 16.5% of listings. In a market this fast, speed favors the prepared. If you want more clean, numbers-first breakdowns as these shifts play out, make sure you're here for the next one.